let me introduce today's topic and panelists. In-orbit technology is rapidly evolving and creating new markets. The technology is blurring legacy distinctions between orbiting infrastructures and may prove to be disruptive. The very latest GEO satellites will soon achieve near terabit throughput capacity at much reduced cost per gigabit per second. Existing MEO constellations are evolving into more powerful systems. Existing LEO systems are upgrading to more advanced levels of capability. And LEO mega-constellations are being deployed. All of these technologies are serving to help meet the bandwidth requirements of an ever-increasing interconnected broadband world. Alongside these potentially disruptive technologies is the disruptive COVID-19 pandemic. Certainly, the world being served by the evolving in-orbit technology is much different from the world existing when plans to develop and deploy these technologies were developed. And hopefully today we are going to give you some answers. And these answers are going to come from our specialist panelists, who I'm pleased to introduce now. We have Hamid Nawaz is a satellite and telecom industry executive with over 22 years of experience. He joined O3B in 2014 and currently leads the Middle East and Central Asia region of SES as General Manager. We are also joined by Manik Vinakota, who is the Director, Commercial and Product Development at Telesat. Manik leads commercial go-to-market for Telesat LEO globally, covering aero, marine and terrestrial verticals. He is responsible for designing surface offerings and engaging strategic partners. And finally, we're pleased to welcome Dave Rabin, who is the Vice President, International Division for Hughes Network Systems. He is currently responsible for the marketing, business development, competitive analysis, and product requirements definition, including ROI evaluation for the International Networks Product Division. Welcome, panelists. Thank you for joining me today. I'd like to start by talking about, are the technologies being deployed in LEO, MEO and GEO and their potential to be disruptive, being affected by consequences of the pandemic? Manik, if you could start.
Oh, Richard. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where everyone is joining from. Thank you, Richard, for the question. From a Telesat LEO perspective, we are focused on the enterprise market, serving the enterprise market. That would be all the verticals you mentioned, terrestrial, mobility, and government. Within the enterprise market, yes, the pandemic has had impact, but it's mixed impact. The mobility markets have been affected to a greater extent, especially aviation and cruise. But on the other side, terrestrial markets, especially backhaul and the telco networks, are seeing more demand, especially on uplink or return throughput and real-time applications like the video conferencing we're having now. So this gives us belief that these are all applications that are well suited for a LEO network, and that's why we are building the Telesat LEO network. And we are positive that when we go live in 2022, the pandemic would be behind us and it wouldn't have any consequence. So to sum it up, no impact from a Telesat LEO's go-to-market plan, and we are steaming ahead.
Dave, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, thanks. And I'd like to thank you for inviting us, Hughes, to join, and welcome to everybody. In terms of our what's the disruption or what's the impact? This pandemic, it's actually intensified the need for our services. Hughes, we act as a service provider as well as a technology provider, but the majority of our revenue is from service. And we've seen just a tremendous increase in our HughesNet traffic. So demand for services is really high, and that's across all of our markets. And that's an obvious thing with so much work from home. And because we're a service provider, a telecommunications service provider, we are an essential business. So our folks have been working the whole time. And it's not just the folks who are working on keeping the network running. Our engineering development folks, most of them have been working from home. The pandemic has not really impacted the progress of our technology development. The work from home for engineering development has been extremely effective. So, I would agree with what Manik just said. It's been relatively little impact on Hughes.
Well, that's interesting. Hamid, what's your take on it?
Yeah, so thanks for us. So I would say that the lockdown situation had the potential of slowing down things. However, I don't see any meaningful long-term impact on the technologies that are being deployed or under development. We see that it's a mix of being affected as well as driven for growth, depending on the applications and the vertical. So I'm actually resonating what both of my colleagues are saying, my panelist colleagues are saying. So take aero, cruise ships, energy, oil, gas, etc. These sectors are virtually on a standstill at the moment. So on the other hand, broadband internet, be it the fixed or mobile, needs substantial expansion, both in terms of reach and bandwidth. I'll give you an example that we are seeing the advantage of our MEO solution in such a scenario, especially. For example, we have a 2.4 meter terminal that is able to support 1.6 gigabits on a particular site without the addition of equipment, and in some cases without physical human intervention. So that's a real disruptive technology, which is actually helping in these times, in these challenging times. So at SES, we have continued running our day-to-day operations with the usual precautions, and the schedule of the satellites under manufacturing has also not been affected.
Thank you. So you mentioned a couple of sectors there. So in your opinion, Dave, what vertical sectors of the industry are at most risk post-pandemic?
I think it's the obvious ones, but I think I would just echo what Hamid just said. In that we view the pandemic as a short-term blip. I would say, I think we're all reasonably confident that an effective vaccine or therapeutics will be coming out relatively soon. So I think it's a short-term thing. But beyond that, it's the obvious mobility. Not nearly as many people are flying on airplanes and or getting on cruise ships.
So Hamid, how quickly do we think the sectors that Dave has mentioned and you talked about, how quickly they're going to come back?
Well, yeah. So obviously, I would say there's a bit of uncertainty there, and I think everybody appreciates that. So, but we are seeing things improving with governments taking decisions on smart lockdowns or lifting those conditions. So we are seeing them coming back, and I would say that any sector that relies on the movement of people is obviously under stress. As I mentioned earlier, the aero and cruise sector comes to mind. So even if things open up, it will take some time to get back to the pre-COVID period. And, but both these segments are the hardest hit. The major cruise liners had to go to even the capital markets to raise funds to keep growth. And oil markets, already the shocks have impacted energy companies. At SES, I would say we continue to closely monitor and engage with our mobility customers around the COVID-19 impact, looking to find the right balance between supporting our customers while at the same time serving the needs and objectives of our business.
Okay. Manik, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, maybe I'll just give you some data points, especially commercial aviation. If you look at the airlines in the US, they've started to bring about 10% more aircrafts into the network this month versus May. So from that perspective, May could be considered a bottoming out. And so green shoots are beginning to appear, but the pandemic has multiple facets. We don't know how it's going to evolve, but nothing else changing. I would say we've gone through the V and we're coming out of the dip now. So that's positive to see.
So let's move on for that. So in your opinion, has the pandemic created new opportunities for operators? Will a broader range of new solutions emerge from this crisis? Manik?
So I think there are a couple of dimensions to look at how this pandemic will impact our industry. From a solutions perspective, definitely, like I mentioned, there's a lot more demand for return traffic or uplink of traffic because the video conference we are having right now, a lot of it's dependent on a two-way channel. So network solutions that can also give enough return throughput, enough low latency is going to become more important as well. So there is going to be more realization of those solutions. And broadly from an industry structure perspective as well, we all know a number of players in the ecosystem have been impacted. So it would be interesting to see how the whole value chain adapts to this. And I think there'll be positive opportunities coming out of that as well.
So Hamid, what about the viewpoint from SES on that?
Yeah, so we have seen an increase in bandwidth demand everywhere, actually. So in the Middle East, in Central Asia, in Latin America, in Africa, Alaska, and even parts of Asia, we have asks from our fixed data, especially mobile network operators and government customers, to assist them in augmenting their networks during stay-at-home policies and also mobilizing relief efforts. So with people staying and working at home, demand for bandwidth has obviously increased, and it is mainly driven by cloud applications. So here is where we at SES have the capability to extend the reach of cloud to the remote areas through our low latency MEO solution. We foresee social inclusion projects also benefiting from government stimulus spending. So with the combination, and our point of view is with the combination of MEO and GEO constellation, we believe that we are rightly placed to leverage these opportunities. For example, SD-WAN, which is one of our solutions, we provide our customers with intelligent application-aware traffic steering and enable network operators to prioritize critical applications over failover link. Yeah.
Well, Dave, this plays right into Hugh's hands. So explain the view from Hughes.
The view from Hughes is the pandemic is really just, you know, as we said before, it's really underscored how important it is to have connectivity. And of course, a key part of our business is HughesNet, where we offer internet services directly to the premise, consumers, small businesses throughout the Americas. And during this crisis, we've just seen increasing demand for subscribers. So we've seen a lot of new subscribers, and that's not just in the US, but throughout our service region. So including in the Americas, Brazil, Colombia, you know, some places it's been hard to fulfill the new orders. Places like Ecuador and Peru have been on virtual lockdown, but we've just seen a tremendous growth in demand. And I think longer term, I think one of the effects that we're going to see is that governments are recognizing that it's extremely important to provide connectivity to citizens. So I think we're going to see a stronger push for bridging the digital divide by governments. So I think we're going to see longer term more policy driving things like community Wi-Fi and cell backhaul in developing parts of the world in order to provide connectivity for citizens.
Do you think that the pandemic is actually the turning point for actually solving the digital divide? Hamid, what do you think?
Definitely it will serve as a catalyst, I would say. Already we at O3 with our O3B solution, we have been talking of the other 3 billion, and that's really a very hard line on the division of those other 3 billions which are not having unreliable or no connectivity at all. So I would say it will definitely serve as a catalyst to faster growth. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on, I'd just like to remind the audience you can use the Q&A function to ask questions at any time. Manik, turning to you, do you think the pandemic has changed the operators' constellation planning moving forward?
I can talk about Telesat's plans. From a Telesat LEO perspective, no, it has not changed our plans. In fact, as Dave mentioned, because a lot more of our engineering team is working from home, it's in fact made everyone more productive. Perhaps everyone is more focused and they have fewer distractions. But more broadly, we stay on course to launch our LEO constellation. Just to give an example, we've said this publicly, we've signed what we call schedule protection programs with our prime contractor teams, and that the intent is very much to protect the schedule and start working on long pole items related to our program development. So yes, we are on track. There's no impact.
Hamid, what about SES? Has it changed their view on what needs to be done post-pandemic?
No, our plans have not changed for the O3B Empower constellation, which we are building at the moment. And in fact, we have recently announced 4 new C-band satellites. These are part of the company's accelerated C-band clearing plan to meet the FCC's objectives to roll out 5G services. Yeah.
So just moving on slightly. So what do we think about the competition between LEO, MEO and GEO post-pandemic? What will drive it? And what will be the consequences? Dave?
I'm not sure that I don't think I'd phrase it as competition between LEO, MEO, and GEO. We think that they're complementary. But by the way, there's more than enough demand to go around between the different constellations. But I think each one of the constellations is, has its own strengths. And so, for instance, GEO is going to offer we think the lowest cost per bit and the lowest cost terminal. So that's well suited for consumer internet services. LEO offers global coverage, low latency. So that's going to be well suited for mobility applications and any kind of latency sensitivity applications. And so I'm not so sure that it's a competition. I think that these technologies are complementary.
Okay, before we go to the other panelists, we have a question that's come in from Hussein, and I'd like to get this answered. His question is, what will be the new normal post this pandemic disruption? What are the likelihoods for satellite operators to avoid disruptions as such in the future? Hamid, if you'd like to answer this one.
Yeah, so if you can come again.
So Hussein's question is, what will be the new normal post this pandemic disruption? What are the likelihoods for satellite operators to avoid disruptions as such in the future?
Yeah, so I think it's a very good question. I would say the new normal for satellite communications, satellite operators would be to develop and what SES is actually doing and exactly what Dave was referring to. We have both MEO and GEO, so we have the answer to varied applications and their needs. So and I would say the new normal would be more connectivity and more connected people, more social inclusion. Yeah. So satellite operators need to focus on multiple solutions for connectivity, because at the end of the day, even if it is a mobile network operator, it is not network operator is not concerned about whether it's MEO, GEO, or LEO till the time their KPIs are met, which is about reliability and performance. And these are the people, these are the companies who have the infrastructure to onward deliver broadband internet to consumers and to reach out to the remotest areas of this world. Yeah.
Okay, we've had a second question in which I'd like to ask. Manik, given the pre-pandemic trend towards LEO smallsat constellations and potential decreased demand for GEO satellites, do you see the pandemic having an impact on this trend?
I think we are reading in too much into the pandemic. I think all of us were working on a program irrespective of the pandemic. If I have to summarize what my other panelists are saying is, if anything, it has catalyzed it even more, especially in our target markets beyond the urban areas. So all that, whether it's better schooling, better healthcare, better connectivity, wherever you are, it's accelerated the transformation. So I think it's going to lift all the boats. It's not a zero-sum game. The whole satellite industry is going to benefit, but you have to be flexible. Your network, your proposition has to be flexible. So in case there's a sudden spurt in demand, you should be able to react, and that can be multiple dimensions. But the minimum that we believe is we need a highly flexible and programmable network. So if telcos want capacity, you should be able to deliver it almost in near real time. So, but yeah, go back to your question. I think it's going to lift all the boats.
Okay. We've got questions coming in thick and fast here, so I'm going to intersperse them as we move on. Staying with LEO at the moment, could overcrowding in LEO have an impact on other orbits? And what constitutes overcrowding? Hamid?
Well, I would say it's too early. LEO is just starting out. I think this question is better addressed by Manik.
Manik?
Yeah, I think there are two questions, so I'll answer them separately. Does it impact, and what does overcrowding mean? So firstly, does it impact? And if I just look at it from the space and what will be allowed, or what does it inhibit other constellations? The answer is no. I think all of us are responsible space operators, and we respect space, and any constellation that goes up there is not going to interfere or prohibit MEO or GEO or other LEO constellations from operating. So that's a given. From your second question, which is overcrowding and how do you define overcrowding? I think it's less about us as the providers. We have to look at this from the customer's perspective. And one metric that we focus a lot is what is the critical requirement that most customers have is what we call concentrated capacity, or capacity over a small defined area. Think big airport hubs or big cruise ports. Demand is going to increase. There'll be more connected planes, connected ships, and they'll want more capacity delivered in a very small area. So if all the networks can deliver that, then good. The customer will have options to pick from. But if there's only one or two who can do that, then it's going to be not overcrowded. So yeah, we look at it, I think, to summarize from a customer's perspective, but I don't think there's overcrowding. There, as Dave mentioned, there's enough demand for all the networks.
So again, we stick with LEO for the moment because we've got a lot of questions coming in about LEO. But we've seen two casualties. We've seen LeoSat and OneWeb. Dave, will we see more?
I don't know. That's a tough one to answer. I don't know. That's not very satisfying for you, Richard. But I can't find my crystal ball.
Manny, well, you're nearly there with your platform, but as I say, it's eating up capital in the market, these other projects. How's Telesat looking at it?
I think as a general preamble, LEO is an orbit, and not every network is the same in LEO. So different operators have taken different approaches of using that orbit to build networks. LeoSat and OneWeb achieved a lot. They built amazing teams. They raised a good amount of financing, customer interest. So they really achieved a lot and brought LEO to the forefront. So thankful for that. At Telesat, like I mentioned, we are focused and we are building it around a specific business case and a specific business model, which is serve the enterprise market, which might means default, we're not serving the consumer market, serve the enterprise market and build a network that best serves the requirements of that market for the next 10, 15 years. We are positive that the 6 odd years that we've spent designing our LEO network, we've gotten it to a sophisticated stage. We are comfortable with our business case and a network design. So we are marching along, like I said, and this summer we will finalize our vendor, a prime manufacturer, so that will give more comfort to, yes, we are going ahead.
Well, this is interesting because it seems our audience want to stick with this, and we have a question coming from Peter Adams, so you're going to need your crystal ball on this one. With the collapse of OneWeb, do the panel believe that capital needed to proceed with the new LEO constellations is in danger of viewing the market as too risky? I'm not sure who would like to have a crack at that one first. Hamid?
Yeah, sure. I can give I would say a more general view on that, and then I can maybe tie it up with or compare it with our MEO. So you see, we believe that the business model of LEO is fundamentally challenging, and I think this is what exactly the question is. It is really difficult to invest a handful of billions in a network which then needs replacing satellites every 4 to 5 years. And the amount of capex that goes into sustain that kind of network is indeed challenging. So with MEO constellation, we believe that we have got the right balance of being close enough to the Earth to deliver the low latency services and far enough to do it in an affordable way. So affordability is the key here. You have got to bring enough bandwidth, you've got to do it at the right kind of price points, and you've got to deliver the right kind of performance. We feel that with MEO, we have the right spot and the right place to do that.
Yeah, and I would just add, echo really what Hamid's saying, and just observe that we're talking a lot of money. billions and billions of dollars. But I think that there's another element to it, which is, I think the industry needs to see its way to a cost-effective remote terminal when it comes to the NGSOs. We're just not there yet in terms of something that's reasonably priced, that's going to work with a good degree of performance. I think that that's a key factor in NGSO.
Well, I'm going to stick with you for the moment, Dave, on this, because one of the questions is, Hughes is an investor in OneWeb. So how has this affected your plans moving forward?
Yeah, so we're obviously disappointed by what happened with OneWeb. We continue to believe in NGSO. As I said before, we believe that NGSO is complementary with GEO, and so we look forward to working with folks like SES and Telesat as they bring forth or expand, in the case of SES, their NGSOs. But in terms of an impact, interestingly, we've spent quite a bit of effort developing the technology for OneWeb, so a fairly good-sized engineering team. But we've been, we have so much demand for other areas in our company. We've been able to very quickly deploy everybody on the team to work on other activities.
Okay, we've got the questions coming in thick and fast here, and there's one from Ali here, and it goes back to the cruise business, and he's very concerned with the cruise business. It's a very unknown status. What is the market expectation in the near term for the cruise business? Hamid, would you like to have a go at that one?
Yes, I think we already talked about it. Cruise business is under a lot of stress at the moment, and we at SCS have really been able to give, I would say, seamless and I would say even frictionless type of a user experience to cruise liners, and when we see what we hear from the market, and it is the guests of the cruise liners who, once they are getting that kind of a fabulous experience, they are the ones who are marketing us our service. So definitely we are missing them. We are missing them to come back. I mean, as far as things going pre-COVID situation, I think I really do not have the crystal ball as well.
Well, before we move on, I'm going to take one more question on this. And it's from Kang, who says, how do you look at SpaceX's Starlink? Is it becoming a real disruption to the whole satcom industry? Well, I would have said that's too early to tell, but Dave, Manik, would you like to have a go at that one?
Well, I'll take a go at that. I think SpaceX, it's interesting what they're doing. They're certainly putting a lot of satellites in orbit. I think it's too early to say. I think SpaceX, they also have to raise tremendous amounts of money, notwithstanding that they've got very good costs on the launch. That's still a tremendous investment to build out the network, and there's still the remote terminal. A lot of companies have been looking to solve the remote terminal issue, specifically the antenna. Low cost, good performance antennas that can be deployed. We haven't seen that yet. if SpaceX can achieve that, then good on them. But I think that's still a couple of hurdles for SpaceX. We certainly wish them well.
Manik, what about you? What's your view?
Yeah, I'll add to what Dave mentioned. When we look at what makes for a disruptive, good network, whether it's LEO, MEO, GEO, irrespective of that, affordability and total cost of ownership to the customer is an important driver. There's no premium in the market just because you're in LEO. We are not intending to build a network for premium services. So if that is if that was a guiding principle, that with a LEO network, we will give better, but compete and with better or at economics of a MEO or GEO or any other network. So having a long life of the satellite, for example, was an important criteria for us. So Starlink is what we know publicly is still a 5-year life satellite versus ours are 10-year plus. You having inter-satellite links is an important criteria to be able to reduce your ground footprint, which we have in our constellation. So there are some drivers that we think are critical to solving the affordability equation, and hence we've taken the path that we've taken, and they are taking a different path. So as Dave mentioned, we'll have to see.
Well, staying with investment, we all know the planned LEO constellations have attracted impressive levels of capital. What effect is this having on investment in other constellations? Hamid?
Yeah, so see, I would like to go from the previous question, because that's I think it is in a way connected. See, we built O3B solution with the concept of partnering with mobile network operators, government, and enterprise customers, and in a way that these telcos and the government would then downstream deliver the broadband to end users. So this is where we see the difference when we compare ourselves to, for example, Starlink, which is directly whose go-to-market is really directly to the end users. So I mean, I would say that's the fundamental difference. And we continue with the same concept for the O3B Empower. Yeah. So I would say, and then I have shared our point of view that we believe that this LEO business in a usual way is probably quite challenging. So yes, I mean, we believe we are at the sweet spot, and we would like to build upon that.
Manik, what about Telesat's view?
I'm not a financial analyst, so I'll give you my limited knowledge on how much money is in the world. I'd love a fair share of that, though. I don't think it's a zero-sum game, Richard. It is not that there's only X amount of dollars dedicated to invest in the satellite industry and there's nothing left. I mean, we've seen this, whether it is SoftBank coming in to invest in OneWeb or investors of Starlink. You are attracting, you're now looking at a global network. That's how investors are looking at it. It's not, I want to have a satellite play only. So if you have a good business case and if it makes sense to the investors, you have a good go-to-market, you have a good execution team, I think the money is there.
You know, I would just chime in and just say, you know, as we've been saying before, the recent events, the pandemic, really just underscored how important it is to have connectivity. So I tend to think it's, you know, as Manik said, it's not a zero-sum game. I think we'll continue to see investment.
Okay. Well, we have a question coming from David. Jowsey, how far away is an affordable NGSO terminal? 1, 3, or 5 years? Who would like to have a crack at that one, Dave?
You know, I would defer to Monik or Hamid on that one, just because they have more involved in the NGSO. I see a lot of activity. We haven't seen a company come to market yet.
Hamid, what do you think?
Yeah. So see, we have been in operations since last 6 years. So really, such a question is a bit of a responsibility on us who are living through this whole challenge of affordable terminal. But it's all relative. See, I just mentioned about the go-to-market strategy for us. So, I'll go into specific business case of a mobile network operator, for example. So what we've done with mobile network operators, we have developed a multi-tenant, which means multiple operators connecting to a single transmission high site, which is a telco language. I'm sure many people are following here. So this is a point of presence that we have developed in many of these places, and an aggregate traffic from multiple E-node Bs or node Bs or BTSs come through the terrestrial transmission media, for example, microwave links. And then an aggregate link is actually carried on or transported over O3b constellation, and then it goes to our gateway and onward transmitted to the core network. So you see, once you amortize all that costs and you take it per terminal, and you try to equate it with, for example, if you would have put a single antenna or a low-cost terminal on each of the BTSs or E-node Bs, the sum total would nearly be the same. So, I mean, when I give you a specific example, one of my customers in Middle East and Central Asian region, they are combining around 32 E-node Bs onto one point of presence. So let's say, I'll not go into the numbering details or not, but that much. But you see, even if it costs us $300,000 for a terminal, you just divide it by 32. So this is where we have been able to make a business case, and hence I think we have solved that pressing problem of a mobile network operator who needs the connectivity and a certain type of connectivity or for a certain type of application. For example, for 3G and 4G, our low latency solution gives them the capability to generate 4 times the revenue for the equivalent data rate that they would get from GEO. And at the same time, we are able to support their 2G traffic used by many countries still for voice on our GEO constellation. And so that point of presence can have a GEO earth station as well. So it is really, I would say it's a bit of a more of an analysis of ROI and calculating a TCO for a customer or a project. Yeah.
Manik, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So going back to, I believe it was David who asked about NGSO terminals, we have to look at it by market. So from a consumer perspective, direct to home NGSO terminal, that we believe is still, there is some work that needs to happen because you not only have to solve for the price, but I believe as a satellite operator, you need to solve for a decently spectrally efficient terminal. So otherwise it doesn't make sense for the operator. So that I would say is not yet there. But if I go into the enterprise market, and that's where we are as Telesat LEO is focused, we are not focused on the consumer. If I look at different markets, whether it is aviation, you have antennas like ThinCom, which is LEO, MEO, GEO compatible. For the cruise and maritime industry, you have antennas which are multi-orbit capable. So it's not a question of when. We are talking of today, they are there. Going to more the smaller sites, let's say for mobile backhaul, again, the technology exists, whether it's dual parabolic, primarily dual parabolic antennas. But we are spending a lot of time on solving the cost equation so that the overall TCO, like Hamid mentioned, makes sense to go directly and put a Telesat LEO compatible terminal directly at the site. So it's much more easy for the telco. We've been engaging with vendors over the last year, and we definitely see a path to that. So for enterprise terminals, some are already there, some are going to come in the next year or so. Consumer, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. It'll take some time.
Okay, well, we have a question here which is directly for you, Hamid. It's with regards to the O3b constellation. And some people are viewing it as the only real valid MEO solution in today's market. But analysts believe the model has changed since we heard the phrase connecting the other 3 billion. Has the model changed? Why is it so successful?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Thanks. So O3b mPOWER will not have a different mission than O3b. So with it is really with far greater coverage, throughput, and flexibility. And O3b mPOWER greatly expands SES ability to pursue that goal and other goals at the same time. And mind you, O3b constellation isn't going away anytime soon. It will continue to make a difference in the lives of people around the world who would otherwise have limited or no ability to benefit from the connectivity. So beginning in 2022, O3b mPOWER will complement O3b, reaching many times more people and bringing them even greater connectivity and tools to thrive in their daily lives and businesses. So SES is as committed to connecting the other 3 billion as we have ever been. We are building O3b mPOWER solutions, as I mentioned before, targeted to telco, government, and enterprise customers. This is really the same model we embraced with O3b. We believe we are best positioned to execute on that goal by enabling our carrier and government customers to deliver broadband to the end users. So our key strengths, really what we have had a learning curve, and what we have the ability to offer carrier-grade, multi-gigabit and uncontended services. And hence there is the difference when we talk of I won't take the names, but any contention-based services. So our success with O3b has been due to the fact that we have been able to address the 2 questions that I referred to one of the questions before that our customers have. How do we grow their revenue and how do we save their costs? So on top of it, it is really seamless, frictionless user experience, and we have been able to deliver this experience to the customer and to the customer's customer. I mentioned the guests on the cruise liners or the 4G mobile internet users in a remote mountainous geography. So all in all, I would say we had the same concept of partnering with those verticals or with those target customers who have the capability to distribute the bandwidth, and we could give them the reach to all those remote areas. And now with O3b mPOWER, our really our focus is to go mainstream. Yeah.
Well, we've just had a question come in for you, Hamid, with regards to subscription costs for O3b. You might want to answer that one after we finish talking. So let's move on because we're starting to run out of time. I'm very well aware of that, but we've got to wrap up at 4. Despite the excitement around LEO and MEO, GEO is still winning the growing satcom market. Why is that, and is this likely to change over the next few years? Hamid, you might as well lead straight into this one.
Sure. That's our sweet spot in any case. So we firmly believe in multiple orbits. You see, SES is the only satellite operator at the moment with satellites in both the MEO and GEO orbits, or you can call GEO and non-GEO orbits. So we can address different customer applications using MEO or GEO. In some cases, we actually use both. So the high capacity MEO deployments that we have done for the past 6 years in Pacific region, for example, has enabled smaller economies to flourish without undersea cables. The GEO has provided credible backup. We have seen similar progress in the cellular backhaul segment as well. I think I just mentioned that we have established carrier neutral multi-tenant POPs operating in tower aggregation mode to support 3G, 4G backhaul over O3B constellation for mobile network operators. And now to add resilience and to support 2G, we have in a few cases GEO Earth station as part of the POP. So the MNOs are not really, and I again mentioned this before as well, that are not really concerned with whether their data is transported over GEO, MEO, or LEO, till the time their KPIs, their applications need are met, the network is scalable, and their challenging business case gets closed. So in the context of your question on GEO winning the growing satcom market, I would say that with MEO, in fact, we have been able to expand the size of the market itself by taking some share of the relatively unreliable terrestrial transmission medium. Now, this is actually, so we have expanded the pie. And as I mentioned before, with O3 Beam Power, our mission is to go mainstream. In fact, we have seen glimpses of that. And one of the glimpses I saw in one of my, I'm experiencing in my region, where we have been able to retain our place as incumbent in competition with fiber. So that's something which I think it's a good news for all of us here as panelists as well as the audience. Yeah, thanks.
Manik.
I think Hamid gave a very good answer. I just to re-echo, growing the pie. I think that's what we fundamentally believe, that if we make a satellite network and scratch out the satellite word and just make it a network that looks, feels, and like a telco grade network, we will all fundamentally increase what the satellite market is doing today. So yes, today, and it goes on terminals, to your previous question. Yeah, even if you do everything good, if there's no good, reliable, affordable terminals, that will accelerate or limit the take-up of a particular network. So I think those are the two thoughts I have.
Dave, would you like to add anything to that?
You know, I would just echo as Manik said. I think that's exactly right. You know, GEO does really well, particularly for the consumer market. Very good cost per bit and very cost-effective terminal. You know, as we've said before, if an electronically steerable antenna comes out that's at a price and performance that's suitable for a consumer, that'll has the potential to change things. But you know, right now, you know, we see GEO as being critical in consumer, and also we think these orbits are complementary.
Well, we're nearly out of time, so I'd just like to wrap up with one more question. And this goes back, unfortunately, to the effects of the pandemic. And it's from Vincent, and he wants to know, considering the impact of the pandemic on the mobility market, what will be the main drivers of revenue growth for satellite operators in the next 3 to 5 years? So, Hamid, would you like to have a go at that one?
Yeah, so I would say from SES perspective, we have a major chunk of our revenue coming from, I would say, non-mobility customers. So that's there, and I would say, I mean, I'm very optimistic that with the kind of growth that is happening in the mobile operators, as well as, I mean, I would say in the broadband side, be it the fixed or mobile, this should give shoulder to that coming back, even if the mobility market is coming back a little bit slowly. So I think all in all, we still see positivity, and I think most of the satellite operators are viewing this in the same way.
Dave.
Yeah, the pandemic has underscored the importance for connectivity. So we see continued growth in the consumer market, but also, as I mentioned before, for some time we've seen a push by governments to bridge the digital divide, and our view is that the pandemic is just going to reinforce that. So we see opportunities in cell backhaul, much as Hamid described, as well as connectivity through things like community Wi-Fi, and then also enterprise. Connectivity is really important, and I think Hamid mentioned SD-WAN. Software-defined wide area networking brings in opportunities for enterprise to provide always-on connectivity in as a complement to terrestrial. So we see a number of drivers that will continue to provide growth for the satellite industry.
Manik, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, just two things to add. From the consumer-focused mobility, aero, cruise, I think though it will take some time for it to recover, I see a lot of our customers and users are using this time to think through and make better long-term plans, because earlier they were in a rush to get to solving for the next day and the next month, but now they can think back, and in a way they're not wasting a crisis, as someone said it. From an enterprise mobility segment, think energy, think merchant marine, so forth. I think the transformation and movement to cloud has really accelerated. So it's not related to the pandemic, but because of the overall second degree effects, they are increasingly moving to the cloud. And as Hamid mentioned, movement to the cloud means more connectivity, more quality connectivity. So all that will positively help the satellite ecosystem.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, but we've now run out of time, and we've still got something like 10 questions that need to be answered. We will follow up with all the people afterwards and get answers to them. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Hamid. Thank you, Manik. Thank you, Dave. It's been a very interesting discussion. Your time and insight has been brilliant. I'd like to thank Proactive PR for their support. If you missed any parts of the webinar, a video will be shared shortly. And finally, the next webinar in the GVF series, the Satellite Integral Factor 2, will W8FH, Render the Cloud a Different Animal, will take place on Thursday the 2nd of July, 3 p.m. UK time. Now, I hope you can join us then. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.